Now, it's time for Spotlight on Business, where every week we put the spotlight on a different local business so you can find out how they serve you and the community. Now from Michiana's Morning News, it's Laura Smith.
Welcome to the Style File, that time once a month when we get to kind of get off of the news, get out of the politics, and just talk about things that people enjoy, men and women. And of course, they've been doing it in style since 1931 in downtown Elkhart. It's Stephensons of Elkhart. So today we have with us not only the great Danny Reynolds, who you all know and love from Michiana Mornings, but he is also now an incredible recipient of an award that has taken his recognition certainly to new heights, not only in our area, in Elkhart, Indiana, but all over the country. Just got back from Washington, where he was awarded the prestigious, you say the exact title for me, Danny Reynolds, because I'll mess it up and I don't want to.
America's Retail Champion.
America's Retail Champion. Congratulations. That was brilliant.
That feels like a bit much for me. I'm just a rag peddler over here, but I was certainly honored to receive it.
So we talked about it last week during the morning show, but for people who are just tuning in right now, the retail champion, I'm thinking, does that just mean that you run a fabulous store? I mean, we know that it's been around for almost 100 years. Stephensons of Elkhart, your family's owned it since 1964. Is it about that, or is it something much deeper that means much more to the United States right now than we even realize, and that's the small business?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, Laura. The folks at the National Retail Federation were on it, obviously very kind and giving me this award this year. But for them, I think it's a situation where they get together and discuss a number of the retailers that they work with annually and decide maybe on someone who has helped them make an impact in retail. And I guess you can do that in a variety of ways, certainly by the businesses that we run or some days run us. And, the legacy that we have and leave in our community. Community is certainly something that they look at. And then a big component of it, because it's a big component of what they do, is just the whole advocacy piece of the puzzle. In other words, I, as you know, am not afraid to advocate for the issues that matter to retail. And as I think I told your listeners last week on Friday, it's easy to put in a box the issues that matter to retail. And we can talk about things like addressing organized retail crime, and as you know, reforming the broken credit card market, as I've talked about many times, and celebrating the benefits of the Working Families Tax Act, things like that. And how they impact retail. But the fact of the matter is, if an issue strongly impacts retail, it strongly impacts our entire nation. All of us, every one of us are affected by retail in some manner or another every day of our lives. So, we look at these as issues that affect us as retailers, but they're really issues that affect us as a nation, even as a society. And, the example that I've used in the past is the credit card swipe fee issue that we've been talking about for a number of years now. It's a broken duopoly of a system that needs reform. And the estimate, not only are the big banks pocketing north of $200 billion a year. That's billion with a B in profits from this system. The estimate from the National Retail Federation is that it's costing the average household another $1,200+ a year just in higher costs associated with these ever rising fees. So that's just one example of how issues that affect retail affect our entire country.
I mean, that's outrageous. The $1,200 per family.
Per household, yes.
Per household. And that's all because we have sort of, stopped using cash in many ways. Like I when I think about how often I use cash now, it's almost never. And
right.
Did they purposely train us to move over to the credit card and the debit card so that they would be able to ultimately do this? Did they foresee it?
Well, I mean, perhaps in a way, yes. I don't know if I'll give them that much credit for the foresight, although possibly it was there. But what happened is during the pandemic, suddenly there was no cash being transacted. All purchases were handled digitally. All purchases were being made by credit card. They realized they had a 100% captive audience, and that was when they first started racking our fees up. So we watched them go up, I think, in the neighborhood of 25% from where they had been back in 2020. And now looking back, ours with my family's business and also every other retailer I know and have talked to, and this is large and small, mind you, from Stevenson's to Walmart to Amazon, all of them have gone up at least three times. In other words, 300% increase since 2020. So when you're shopping your favorite local store or you're going to your favorite little coffee shop or whatever it might be, and you see the credit card surcharge, please don't think that these retailers are being greedy. It's because these costs have just gone up exponentially. And this, mind you, is a top two or three expense for almost every retailer. For retailers like us that obviously have a lot of inventory overhead, that's a large expense. Staffing is a large expense. Credit card processing fees falls in right under those two. So it's a top five for almost any business doing any retail transactions at all. So you can see how quickly this money racks up. And as I said, you're talking profits of in the hundreds of billions of dollars annually for Visa and MasterCard.
Wow. So when you do see this surcharge, on your bills, sometimes you get them at restaurants now, and it'll just be right there, a 3% credit card, or they'll say if you pay with cash, we won't pass that on to you. But so are we? Why wouldn't they just build that into, or why wouldn't you build that into the cost of the shirt you're selling or the slacks you're selling?
Well, I guess that's a business decision for every retailer, and different retailers will approach that from different ways. Where I really feel for are those of us who are selling in a contracted MSRP type situation or agreement. In other words, some of our vendors, for us, this happens a lot on the bridal side of things. We, by contract, cannot sell items for less than a specified price. The vendors call it sort of protecting their retailers. So, in other words, a young lady who finds a gown she loves can't call around and potentially find it for less at one place than another. I won't get into the nuances of that and why I may or may not like that idea, but it is what it is. So, in order for us to sell certain vendors, we have to contractually agree that we will sell, for certain prices. So that makes it tricky. But if you look into, more competitive and marginally compromised markets, the one that I think about is the convenience store market. They are operating on very slim margins in those types of environments, and if you're going in for a cup of coffee for, these days, what's it going to be? $2, $3 at the very least, probably more like five in many areas. People are price conscious about those things. So to build it in is going to make a difference in the price, probably noticeably. And also people are going to think that you're just jacking your prices up. I think the consensus of the retailers is that maybe if we put it as a line item on the bill, people will see that and understand. And they have the ability to pay cash in that situation and save a little bit of money. So again, that's not necessarily how we've approached it, but I understand it's how a lot of retailers do. We actually, as a business of our own, have just kind of absorbed those costs.
So I'm going to cut you off for just a second because now I'm remembering our earlier conversations we had about tariffs. And this goes back about a year when the new administration, took over and this whole thing with tariffs happened. But since then, hasn't that changed? And wasn't the administration forced to stop that? And how has your business been able to kind of bounce back from that? Have you or have you not? Are you still having to deal with those price changes and such?
Yeah, it's just kind of an ongoing issue. As you probably know, the administration is now kind of found other approaches to levy these tariffs. And as you well know, Laura, I understand, appreciate what the Trump administration is trying to do here. They're trying to level the playing field as far as international trade goes, and I couldn't agree more. I would love to see domestic production and return to the U.S. as much as any proud American would. So I certainly don't want anybody to think that I'm standing on some sort of anti-tariff soapbox. What I am promoting is strategic tariffs, things that we are not capable of producing here in the States, that type of thing. And we as importers, since just this year, just in 2026, we've paid more than $49 billion in tariffs. And there is a process in place that they're trying to refund many of those tariffs. But as with many new government processes, there's been some stumbling blocks. There's been some issues with the website, and there are still a lot of money or a lot of businesses trying to get a lot of money back. So that's just kind of an ongoing thing. So that's going to be a while before that whole situation gets cleaned up, I think.
It's really something like I think when people think of, oh, you own Stephensons of Elkhart, it's a wonderful legacy, uh, you know, apparel store. I don't think people realize the intensity that goes into having to run a business, even like a clothing store. How much do you need to learn about economics and, just the way that the world is working right now and having to change with that? Did you know that when you got into retail, or did your family just think, okay,
Absolutely
this is
not.
a fun business because everyone loves clothes and we can get them really pretty ones?
Yeah, it's not something I probably understood going in, and I think things have evolved in our world, in our business, and in our specific industry. So I think it's gotten more complicated in the 3 decades that I've been doing it. And that is compounded by the fact that we here at Stevenson's have been doing it for nearly 10 decades. We'll be coming up on 100 years before we know it here. And I joke sometimes that we have to be careful to not overcomplicate what we're doing here. What we're trying to do is put pretty clothes on pretty people. And sometimes you get, years and then decades of systems built on top of each other. Kind of reminds me of the government sometimes. And sometimes you do things because why? That's the way you've always done them. And so you always have to take that step back. But yes, as far as the complexity of retail, it has gotten so much more so, and in many cases because of the digital era that we live in, and now the vast potential to sell interstate, online. In other words, people shopping on retailers' websites from state to state. That's made things very much more complicated than they used to be. So yeah, it's very complex, and there are a lot of considerations on a daily basis, and that's one of the reasons that I've kind of taken it upon myself to fight this advocacy fight, because the National Retail Federation, for example, is a great organization, and their sole intention is to support retail. So they kind of have their fingers on the pulse of the big issues that matter to all of us. And by being able to work with them, communicate with them, talk with them, it helps them to understand the battles we're fighting. It helps us to understand what's going on out there at a larger scale. And I feel like I spent so many years of my career buried here in my business, just consistently doing what we had to do to make Stevenson's hopefully what it is today. And you don't often have time to think about the big picture, what's going on around you. And so if I guess now that I've gotten myself to a place in my career where I'm so blessed to be surrounded by amazing people that do amazing jobs here on a daily basis, it affords me the ability to have a little bit more time to focus on advocacy and again, just things that matter to our business. So I like to do some of the thinking about it for you that don't have time to do it, and like to hope that I'm helping making the retail world just a little bit easier and smoother than it was before.
I have a feeling you are. And in fact, indeed, you have the award to speak to that. And we are so proud, I would say, to have you here, not only advocating for small business, but just representing Elkhart, Indiana. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm thinking that, I think you said there were 50 people that were sort of vying in it for the award, and from 27 different states. You were picked, and I think it's pretty clear as to why. You really have your finger on the pulse of it, but I think at the end of the day, you're doing it for us, for the consumer, and in keeping people beautiful, as you put before. Danny Reynolds here with the Style File, as usual, at once a month, and keeping us up to date with retail and all that goes into it, and everything beautiful at Stephensons of Elkhart. When we come back, I'm sure you're going to let us know where the trends are going for this next season, because you're already doing the great, what do you call it, the shift over into the new season coming up. So Danny Reynolds and me, Laura Smith, will be right back with the Style File.
Podcasts by Federated Media.